During his wife's funeral, a widowed millionaire cried silently, immersed in seemingly endless grief. But everything changes when a poor little girl, soaked from the rain, approaches him and makes an unexpected request. "Can you read this will for me?" Upon opening the envelope, the businessman discovers a truth that had been buried for years. You will be surprised by this story.
If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The Boston rain fell mercilessly on the cemetery, washing away the fresh flowers placed on the casket. Blake Harrison stood motionless, his 6'2" frame now appearing smaller, diminished by grief. The man who controlled a billion-dollar tech empire couldn't control the tears mixing with raindrops on his face. His wife's casket was being lowered into the ground, and with it, everything that had given his life meaning for the past 7 years. Blake clutched Elizabeth's wedding ring in his palm so tightly it left an imprint. At 42, he had achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of professionally, but now his personal life lay in ruins. The doctors had called it an aneurysm, sudden, unpredictable. One moment, Elizabeth was laughing over breakfast, planning their anniversary trip to the Maldives. The next, she was gone. Just like that. No warning, no goodbye. The mourners began dispersing, black umbrellas creating a somber procession toward the line of luxury cars. Blake remained fixed in place, rain soaking through his custom Tom Ford suit. His security detail and assistant waited at a respectful distance, exchanging concerned glances. They had never seen their boss, a man known for his unflinching composure during the most hostile takeovers, so utterly broken. "Mr. Harrison, sir? Perhaps we should—" His assistant, Megan, approached tentatively, her voice gentle. Blake raised his hand slightly, silencing her without a word. His eyes never left the mahogany casket. "Leave me," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. "I'll find my way back." Reluctantly, his staff retreated to their vehicles, leaving Blake alone with his grief. The cemetery workers, having witnessed countless similar scenes, discreetly paused their work and stepped away, understanding the unspoken request for privacy. Time passed. Blake wasn't sure how much, when he sensed movement to his right. Through the blur of rain and tears, he noticed a small figure approaching. A child, no more than 5 years old, was walking determinedly toward him. Her blue dress was drenched, her blonde hair plastered to her pale face. She clutched a manila envelope protectively against her chest, sheltering it from the rain with her tiny body. Blake frowned. Who would bring a child to a funeral? And why was she wandering alone? The girl stopped a few feet away, her wide blue eyes meeting his. There was something unsettlingly familiar about those eyes. "Are you Mr. Blake Harrison?" she asked, her voice small but surprisingly steady. Blake nodded, momentarily pulled from his grief by the odd situation. "My grandma said I need to give this to you." The girl extended the envelope. "She said it's very important and you have to read it right now." Blake hesitated, then took the envelope. It was damp around the edges, but relatively dry where the child had protected it. "Who is your grandmother?" "Where is she?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma had to go away, like the angels, but she made me promise to give you this when they put the pretty lady in the ground." A chill that had nothing to do with the rain ran down Blake's spine. He looked around, expecting to see someone watching them, perhaps the child's parent, but they were alone among the gravestones. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she answered. Lily Miller. The name meant nothing to Blake. He examined the envelope, which had no markings except his name written in elegant cursive on the front. "Where are your parents, Lily?" "Mommy's in the hospital. She's very sick." The little girl's voice wobbled. "Grandma was taking care of me, but now Daddy needs to take care of me." "That's what Grandma said." Blake felt a growing unease. "And who is your daddy?" Lily pointed at the envelope in his hands. "Grandma said that paper tells you everything." With growing apprehension, Blake carefully opened the envelope, trying to shield its contents from the rain. Inside was a thick document with an official seal, a last will and testament, along with several smaller sealed, envelopes, and what appeared to be medical documents. The first line of the will made his heart stop. Last will and testament of Eleanor Miller, regarding the guardianship and inheritance of my granddaughter, Lily Miller, the biological daughter of Blake Harrison and Sarah Miller. Blake felt the ground shift beneath him. Biological daughter? That was impossible. He'd never had a child. He and Elizabeth had tried for years before doctors confirmed his low sperm count made natural conception highly unlikely. They had been considering adoption when Elizabeth... His eyes scanned the document frantically, catching fragments of sentences that sent shockwaves through his system. DNA confirmation. Enclosed. Deliberate deception by Victoria. Chambers falsified medical records to convince Blake of his infertility. Fabricated. Evidence of infidelity to separate them. Sarah never knew the extent of Victoria's manipulation. Victoria. Just reading the name sent a surge of bitter memories through Blake, his former VP of marketing, his girlfriend before Elizabeth. They had been together for 3 years, and the breakup had been ugly. Victoria had shown him evidence that Sarah, his previous girlfriend, had been unfaithful. He'd believed her, ended things with Sarah without even a conversation, and fallen into Victoria's waiting arms. Later, Victoria had been the one to refer him to the fertility specialist who had diagnosed him. Blake's gaze returned to the child standing patiently in the rain. He searched her face with new awareness. The blue eyes, the shape of her nose, the stubborn set of her chin. How had he not seen it immediately? She looked just like his mother. "Mr. Harrison?" Lily's small voice broke through his shock. "Are you okay? You look like you're gonna throw up." Blake forced himself to breathe. I'm fine, Lily. Let me just..." He continued reading, his hands now trembling so violently he could barely hold the papers. Eleanor Miller's will explained that she had spent the last year of her life gathering evidence of Victoria's elaborate scheme. Bank records showing payments to medical professionals, emails detailing her plan, even a recorded confession from the doctor who had falsified Blake's infertility diagnosis. The will also explained that Sarah, Blake's college sweetheart, had discovered she was pregnant after their breakup, but her attempts to contact him had been intercepted by Victoria. Sarah had never told Blake about the pregnancy, believing he had abandoned her deliberately. She had raised Lily with her mother Eleanor's help, never knowing the full truth until recently. The final pages of the will delivered the most stunning revelation. Eleanor Miller had terminal cancer and had died just 3 days ago. Now, Sarah herself was battling stage 3 ovarian cancer with a poor prognosis unless she could access experimental treatment. Eleanor's substantial inheritance for Lily came with 2 conditions. Blake must legally acknowledge his paternity, and he must marry Sarah Miller within 6 months. "This is insane," Blake whispered, looking from the papers to the child, his child, standing solemnly before him. "Are you my daddy?" Lily asked, her voice small but direct, eyes searching his face. The question hit Blake like a physical blow. Before he could formulate a response, his security detail approached rapidly. Davis, his head of security, looked concerned. "Sir, there's a situation. Child Services is here with the police. They're looking for a missing child matching this girl's description." On cue, 2 women and a police officer appeared at the cemetery gates, scanning the area. One pointed in their direction. Blake made a split-second decision. He knelt to Lily's eye level, heart hammering in his chest. "Lily, I need to figure some things out. These people are going to take care of you for a little while, but I promise I'll come find you very soon." "Okay?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma said you'd take me home. She said you're my daddy and you'll take care of me and Mommy." Blake felt something crack inside him, a fissure in the wall of grief that had seemed impenetrable moments ago. "I need to make some calls first, to help your mom and make sure everything is legal." He gently placed his hand on her tiny shoulder. "I promise I'll come for you." As the authorities approached, Blake stood and turned to Davis. "Get my lawyers here, now, and find everything you can on Sarah Miller, Eleanor Miller, and Victoria Chambers. I want medical records, financial transactions, everything. Call the jet. We're not going back to New York today. Davis nodded, already dialing. The social worker reached them, relief evident on her face. Lily, we've been so worried. Your nurse has been looking everywhere for you. Blake handed the will to Davis. I need to speak with you about this child, he told the social worker, his voice regaining the authoritative tone that had made him a formidable force in the business world. There's been a significant development regarding her guardianship. As Lily was gently led away by the social worker, she looked back at Blake, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. In that moment, standing in the rain beside his wife's grave with his world completely upended, Blake Harrison made a silent vow. If this child was truly his, he would move heaven and earth to protect her. And if Sarah Miller had been wronged as grievously as Eleanor's will suggested, he would make it right, whatever the cost. Arrange a meeting with Ms. Miller's doctors, he instructed Megan, who had rejoined him, and find out which room she's in. I need to see her. Today. As his team scrambled to execute his commands, Blake took one final look at Elizabeth's casket. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then he turned away, following the path Lily had taken, stepping into an uncertain future that had appeared out of nowhere to claim him. The rain continued to fall, but Blake no longer felt it. His mind was already racing ahead, formulating plans, weighing options, seeking control in a situation that had spiraled far beyond anything he could have imagined when he woke up that morning. The business titan was awakening from his grief, determination replacing despair. Someone had manipulated his life, stolen years he could never recover, and created a web of lies that had altered the course of multiple lives. That someone would answer for it. Blake Harrison always settled his debts, and this was a debt 7 years in the making. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Blake's Range Rover cut through Boston's rain-slicked streets, windshield wipers beating a frantic rhythm that matched his pulse. In the back seat, his legal team was already reviewing Eleanor Miller's will, making calls and pulling strings. Massachusetts General Hospital, Davis confirmed from the driver's seat. Sarah Miller has been a patient there for 3 weeks. Ovarian cancer stage 3, aggressive. Her mother was her primary caregiver and her daughter's guardian. Blake nodded, staring out the window at the blurring cityscape. His mind was still reeling from the bombshell dropped on him barely 2 hours ago. A daughter, a former love fighting cancer, a 7-year conspiracy orchestrated by Victoria. What do we know about the grandmother's passing? He asked. Jennifer Zhao, his chief counsel, looked up from her tablet. Eleanor Miller died 3 days ago from complications of pancreatic cancer. She was 72. The will was filed immediately, as per her instructions. And the social services situation? With Eleanor deceased and Sarah hospitalized, they took temporary custody of the child this morning. There was apparently an arrangement for a nurse to care for Lily at the hospital, but she slipped away during a shift change. To find me, Blake murmured, remembering the small, drenched figure approaching him in the cemetery. A fierce, unexpected protectiveness surged through him. And the DNA evidence mentioned in the will? Jennifer hesitated. We've only had a preliminary look, but it appears legitimate. Eleanor Miller commissioned 3 separate tests from reputable labs. They all indicate a 99.97% probability that you're Lily's biological father. Blake closed his eyes, letting that sink in. Despite the shock and the circumstances, something like wonder was beginning to push through his grief. A daughter. He had a daughter. Sir, Jennifer continued carefully, about the will's conditions. Not now. Blake cut her off. First, I need to see Sarah. Then I want every document scrutinized, every claim verified. And I want Victoria Chambers located immediately. The car pulled up to the hospital's main entrance. Blake straightened his still damp tie and stepped out, his security team flanking him instantly. The hospital staff, recognizing the entourage of a VIP patient, directed them efficiently to the oncology floor. Outside Sarah's room, Blake paused. What would he say to a woman he hadn't seen in almost 8 years? A woman who believed he had abandoned her when she needed him most? Who had raised his child alone, never knowing they had both been victims of an elaborate deception? Taking a deep breath, he knocked softly and entered. The room was dimly lit, machines beeping steadily. Blake's breath caught in his throat. Sarah Miller lay in the hospital bed, thinner than he remembered, her once vibrant red hair now short and dull against the white pillow. She was sleeping, an IV drip connected to her arm, her skin pale. Blake moved closer, studying her face. Despite the evident toll of her illness, he could still see the woman who had once been his first real love, the creative writing major who had challenged his practical business mindset, who had introduced him to poetry and art, who had believed in his dreams before anyone else. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to shock as she recognized him. "Blake?" Her voice was a whisper, as if she thought she might be hallucinating. "Hello, Sarah." He stood awkwardly at her bedside, overwhelmed with competing emotions. She struggled to sit up. "What are you? How did you?" Her eyes widened suddenly. "Lily! Where's Lily?" "Is she okay?" "She's fine," Blake assured her quickly. "She's with social services. She found me today." He hesitated, then added, "At my wife's funeral." Sarah sank back against her pillows. "Oh God, I'm so sorry about Elizabeth. I read about it in the news." She closed her eyes briefly. "But I don't understand. How did Lily find you?" Blake pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down. "Eleanor's will. Lily brought it to me." Sarah's expression changed from confusion to alarm. "Mom's will? But how would Lily? She's just a little girl." "Someone helped her, I'm sure. I'm still piecing it together." Blake leaned forward. "Sarah, the will contains some extraordinary claims. About Victoria. About my fertility diagnosis. About Lily being my daughter." Sarah's face paled even further. She turned away, tears filling her eyes. "I never thought you'd find out." "Not like this." Her voice trembled. "Mom only told me parts of it recently. That Victoria had manipulated things somehow. I didn't know the full extent until after Mom's diagnosis, when she started gathering evidence." "So it's true. Lily is mine." Blake's voice cracked slightly on the last word. Sarah met his gaze directly. "Yes, she's yours, Blake. I found out I was pregnant after you left. I tried to reach you, but your number was changed. Your emails bounced back. And when I went to your office, security turned me away. Victoria told me you wanted nothing to do with me or my mistake. That's what she called our baby." Blake felt sick. "I never knew, Sarah. I never got any of your messages. Victoria showed me pictures of you with another man, emails where you supposedly confessed to cheating. I believed her. It was the biggest mistake of my life." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I always wondered why you didn't even want to talk. It wasn't like you to be so cruel." "I was a fool," Blake admitted. "Then Victoria referred me to that fertility specialist who diagnosed me with severe oligospermia, practically sterile. When Elizabeth and I couldn't conceive, it confirmed everything I thought I knew." He ran a hand through his hair. The specialist was on Victoria's payroll. The diagnosis was fabricated. Sarah closed her eyes, absorbing this. She really did all that? But why? Power, control, maybe some twisted version of love. Blake's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter. What matters now is Lily, and you." He gestured to the hospital room. "Your treatment." Eleanor's will mentioned experimental protocols. Sarah nodded slowly. "There's a cutting-edge immunotherapy trial at MD Anderson in Houston. My oncologist says it's my best chance, but my insurance won't cover experimental treatments, and the out-of-pocket costs are astronomical. Mom was trying to liquidate assets to help, but then her condition worsened." "I'll cover everything," Blake said immediately. "The best treatment, the best doctors. Whatever you need." Sarah's eyes flashed with a spark of her old spirit. "I don't want your charity, Blake." "It's not charity. It's my responsibility. To both of you." He leaned forward. "Sarah, do you know what else was in Eleanor's will?" "The conditions?" She frowned. "Conditions? No. Mom said she was making arrangements, but she didn't share the details." Blake hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path forward. The will stipulates that for Lily to receive her inheritance, I need to legally acknowledge paternity and... And? Sarah prompted when he paused. And we need to marry within 6 months. Sarah's eyes widened. Marry? That's insane! My mother had no right... A fit of coughing interrupted her protest. Blake quickly poured water from a pitcher on the nightstand and helped her drink. When she recovered, Sarah looked exhausted. Blake, I'm sorry about all this. About Lily showing up at your wife's funeral, about my mother's ridiculous conditions. You don't have to do anything. I'll figure something out for Lily if... She couldn't finish the sentence. If you don't recover, Blake completed gently. But you will recover. I'll make sure of it. A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse entered, followed by a woman in a business suit whom Blake recognized as the social worker from the cemetery. Ms. Miller, how are you feeling today? The nurse asked, checking Sarah's vitals. I've had better days, Cheryl. Sarah attempted a smile. The social worker stepped forward. Ms. Miller, I'm Diane Fowler from Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about Lily's situation. Blake stood. I'm Blake Harrison. I believe I'm Lily's biological father, and I'd like to be part of this discussion. Ms. Fowler's professional demeanor couldn't quite mask her surprise. Mr. Harrison? The Blake Harrison? I see. This is an unexpected development. Where is my daughter now? Blake asked, the word daughter feeling strange but right on his tongue. She's in our temporary care facility. She's safe, but understandably upset. She keeps asking for her mother and grandmother. Miss Fowler glanced at her notes. There was no father listed on her birth certificate. That's going to change, Blake stated firmly. I've only just learned of Lily's existence today, but I intend to acknowledge paternity immediately and assume full responsibility for her care. The social worker looked skeptical. Mr. Harrison, while I appreciate your intentions, there are procedures that must be followed. Legal paternity must be established. Home assessments conducted. I understand, Blake interrupted. My legal team is already preparing the necessary documentation, including DNA test results that confirm I'm Lily's father. In the meantime, I'd like to see her. Sarah spoke up weakly from the bed. Please, Miss Fowler, Lily's already lost her grandmother. She needs familiar faces around her. Ms. Fowler's expression softened. I'll arrange a supervised visit tomorrow morning, but I must emphasize that any changes to Lily's custody will require court approval. After the social worker left, Blake turned back to Sarah. I'm going to fix this. All of it. Sarah studied his face. Why? You've just lost your wife. Your world has been turned upside down. Why take on this burden now? Blake considered her question carefully. Because it's the right thing to do. Because 7 years have already been stolen from me, from us. And because... He looked away briefly, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Because when Lily looked at me with those blue eyes, my mother's eyes, something changed. I can't explain it, but I felt it. She's my daughter, Sarah. Our daughter. Sarah's expression softened. She has your stubbornness, too, and your dimple when she smiles. A tear slid down her cheek. I always saw you in her. It broke my heart a little every day. Blake reached out tentatively and took Sarah's hand. It felt small and fragile in his. I'm sorry for what you've been through, what you're going through, but you're not alone anymore. In that moment of connection, the nurse returned with a doctor. Ms. Miller, we need to do some additional tests before tomorrow's treatment. Blake stood. I should go. Is there anything you need? Anything I can bring tomorrow? Sarah hesitated, then asked softly, Could you bring Lily? Even for a few minutes? I miss her so much. I'll move mountains if I have to, Blake promised, squeezing her hand gently before releasing it. Outside the hospital room, Blake rejoined his waiting team. His grief for Elizabeth was still raw and present, but alongside it now burned a fierce determination. Looking at his chief of security, he issued a series of rapid-fire commands. Davis, I want around-the-clock security for both Sarah and Lily. Jennifer, expedite the paternity acknowledgement and start preparing custody paperwork. Megan, Contact MD Anderson in Houston. I want their top oncologists reviewing Sarah's case by morning. And someone find Victoria Chambers. Now!" As his team dispersed to execute his orders, Blake stood alone in the hospital corridor, the antiseptic smell reminding him of the countless hours he'd spent in similar hallways during Elizabeth's brief illness. He allowed himself one moment of doubt, wondering what Elizabeth would think of all this. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the exit, a man with a new mission. Someone had tried to destroy lives through deception and manipulation. That someone had succeeded for 7 years, but not anymore. Not on his watch. In less than 24 hours, Blake Harrison had lost a wife and gained a daughter. The man who prided himself on controlling every aspect of his business empire now faced a situation no spreadsheet or strategic plan could have anticipated. Yet somehow, amidst the chaos and grief, he felt the first fragile stirrings of something he'd thought buried with Elizabeth. Hope. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Morning light filtered through the blinds of Blake's suite at the Four Seasons, Boston. He hadn't slept. How could he? His mind raced with the implications of yesterday's revelations, processing grief and shock simultaneously. On the coffee table before him lay printouts of medical records, bank statements, and email correspondence, the evidence Eleanor Miller had meticulously compiled against Victoria Chambers. The more Blake read, the colder his anger burned. Victoria hadn't just manipulated him. She had orchestrated an elaborate scheme spanning years. She had paid hospital staff to intercept Sarah's calls and block her from visiting. She had hired photographers to stage compromising photos of Sarah with a male friend. She had bribed a fertility specialist to falsify Blake's medical records, knowing that a man as thorough as Blake would seek second opinions, which she had also arranged through her network of paid accomplices. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Jennifer entered with a folder of legal documents. "The paternity acknowledgement is ready for your signature," she said, placing the folder before him. "Once filed, it formally establishes you as Lily's biological father. I've also drafted temporary custody papers requesting immediate guardianship given Sarah's medical condition." Blake signed without hesitation. "What about the DNA confirmation?" "The tests Eleanor Miller commissioned are admissible, but we've arranged for an official test today as a formality. Results should be expedited within 48 hours. Jennifer hesitated. "There's something else you should see." She handed him a tablet displaying a social media post. Victoria Chambers, elegant as ever in a designer dress, was pictured at a charity gala in New York just last night. The caption read, "Sending thoughts and prayers to my dear friend Blake Harrison during this difficult time." Elizabeth was truly irreplaceable. Blake's expression hardened. "She's always been skilled at playing the sympathetic friend." "There's more," Jennifer continued. "Financial records show she's been quietly selling off her shares in Harrison Technologies over the past month, and she's been meeting with executives from your chief competitor, Axiom Corp. Industrial espionage," Blake concluded, "selling company secrets on her way out. Classic Victoria." His phone buzzed with a text from Davis. "Car ready. Social services expecting us at 9:30. Blake stood, straightening his tie. "Have the legal team ready to move on Victoria. I want evidence of every meeting, every data breach, every confidentiality violation. But we wait until I give the word. I don't want her suspecting anything yet." The Children's Services Facility was a low brick building with cheerful murals adorning its walls, a place trying desperately to feel like anything but what it was. A way station for children in crisis. Blake followed Ms. Fowler down a hallway to a small playroom where Lily sat alone, listlessly coloring a picture book. The child looked up as they entered. Her blue eyes, his mother's eyes, widening with recognition. "You came back," she said simply, as if she'd been testing him. Blake knelt to her level. "I promised I would." Lily studied him with that uncanny directness children sometimes possess. "Are you really my daddy?" Blake felt a lump in his throat. "Yes, I am. I just found out yesterday, but I am your father, Lily." Grandma said you didn't know about me. She said bad people told you lies. Lily tilted her head. Did you know my mommy before? Blake nodded, aware of Miss Fowler observing their interaction. I knew your mom a long time ago. We lost touch before you were born. But I'm here now. Lily considered this. Can I go home now? I don't like it here. The beds feel funny. Not yet, sweetheart. There's some grown-up stuff we need to take care of first. Blake hesitated, then asked gently, Would you like to visit your mom at the hospital today? Lily's face lit up. Yes, Mommy must be so worried. She doesn't like when I'm not there for story time. Blake smiled, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Then let's not keep her waiting. Miss Fowler cleared her throat. Mr. Harrison, while I appreciate your enthusiasm, there are procedures. Ms. Fowler. Blake interrupted smoothly. I understand your concerns, but Sarah Miller has requested to see her daughter. As Lily's mother and current legal guardian, surely her wishes carry significant weight. Additionally, I've just signed formal acknowledgement of paternity. He handed her a business card. My legal team can address any questions you might have. The social worker recognized the name of one of Boston's most prestigious law firms on the card. I see. Well, a supervised hospital visit would be permissible. I'll need to accompany you. Of course, Blake agreed, turning back to Lily. Is there anything you'd like to bring for your mom? Lily nodded earnestly. My picture? I'm drawing her getting better. She held up her coloring book, showing a childish but touching illustration of a woman standing up from a hospital bed, surrounded by hearts. It's beautiful, Blake said softly. She'll love it. 30 minutes later, they arrived at Massachusetts General. Davis had arranged for a private entrance to avoid media attention, and Blake's security detail ensured a clear path to Sarah's room. Sarah was sitting up in bed when they entered, looking marginally better than the previous day. Her face transformed with joy when Lily ran to her. Mommy! The little girl scrambled onto the bed, careful of the IV tubes, and wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck. Oh, my baby, Sarah murmured, holding her daughter close, eyes closed in relief. I missed you so much. Blake stood back, giving them space, struck by the powerful bond between mother and daughter. He felt like an intruder witnessing this intimate reunion, yet also undeniably connected to it. After several minutes of whispered exchanges and kisses, Sarah looked up at Blake with tear-filled eyes. Thank you for bringing her. Blake nodded, then gently addressed Lily. Why don't you show your mom the picture you made? As Lily proudly presented her artwork, Blake pulled Ms. Fowler aside. I'd like a moment to speak privately with Ms. Miller. Could you perhaps take Lily to the cafeteria for ice cream? The social worker hesitated, then relented. 15 minutes? We'll be right down the hall. Once they were alone, Blake sat beside Sarah's bed. How are you feeling today? Marginally less like I've been hit by a truck. She attempted a smile. The oncologist was in earlier. He's reviewing the trial protocol from MD Anderson. Blake nodded. I've arranged for a medical transport to Houston as soon as you're cleared to travel. The trial's principal investigator has agreed to take your case. Sarah looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. Blake, this is all happening so fast. Yesterday you were burying your wife, and today you're arranging experimental cancer treatments and fighting for custody of a child you just learned exists. Are you sure about this? Blake met her gaze directly. I've never been more certain of anything. Elizabeth. His voice caught slightly. Elizabeth would have wanted this. She always believed in doing the right thing, no matter how difficult. Sarah reached out and squeezed his hand. I'm so sorry about Elizabeth. I remember how you looked at her in those magazine photos, the way you used to look at me. Once. A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with shared history and unspoken regrets. I've seen the evidence your mother gathered, Blake finally said. About Victoria. About what she did to separate us. Sarah's expression darkened. Mom hired a private investigator after my diagnosis. She was determined to set things right before... She didn't finish the sentence. I had no idea how far Victoria had gone. The faked fertility tests, the intercepted messages. It seems almost unhinged. Victoria has always been ruthlessly strategic, Blake said grimly. Nothing she does is without calculation. She wanted control of Harrison Technologies through me. When you threatened that plan, she eliminated the competition. What will you do now? Legally? I'll acknowledge Lily and petition for joint custody immediately. As for Victoria, Blake's eyes hardened. Justice will come, but first, your treatment and Lily's security are the priorities. Sarah nodded, then hesitated. And the marriage condition in Mom's will? Blake ran a hand through his hair. Your mother was nothing if not determined. But let's focus on your recovery first. The rest we can figure out along the way. A knock at the door signaled Ms. Fowler's return with Lily, who bounded back to her mother's side with chocolate ice cream evidence around her mouth. Mr. Harrison, the social worker said, we should be returning to the facility soon. Lily's face fell. I don't want to go back there. I want to stay with Mommy. Blake exchanged glances with Sarah, then made a decision. Ms. Fowler, I'd like to discuss an alternative arrangement. I've taken a suite at the Four Seasons with adequate space for Lily. With the court's permission, I could provide proper accommodation for her there with professional child care while maintaining proximity to her mother. The social worker frowned. That's highly irregular, Mr. Harrison. So are the circumstances, Blake countered. Lily has lost her grandmother and primary caregiver. Her mother is seriously ill, and her newly discovered father is committed to her well-being. Surely keeping her in an institutional setting when there's a viable family alternative isn't in her best interest? Sarah spoke up, her voice stronger than it had been. I support this arrangement, Ms. Fowler. Blake is Lily's biological father, and I trust him to care for her. Ms. Fowler looked between them, clearly weighing the unusual request against the influence Blake Harrison clearly wielded. I'll need to consult with my supervisor and the judge. In the meantime, Lily needs to return with me. Sensing Lily's impending protest, Blake knelt beside the bed. Lily, I need you to be brave for just a little longer. Ms. Fowler is going to take you back to the center for tonight, but I promise I'm working on bringing you to stay with me very soon. And we'll visit your mom every day. Can you be my brave girl? Lily's lower lip trembled, but she nodded solemnly. That's my girl, Blake said softly, surprising himself with how natural the words felt. After Lily had hugged Sarah goodbye and reluctantly left with Ms. Fowler, Blake remained in Sarah's room. The doctor had arranged for the DNA test, which had been a simple cheek swab for both Blake and Lily. The judge will expedite the results, Blake told Sarah. With a positive match and your support, temporary custody should be granted within days. Sarah studied him, a question in her eyes. This isn't just about fulfilling my mother's conditions, is it? What's driving you, Blake? Blake considered her question carefully. When Elizabeth died, I thought everything meaningful in my life went with her. Then Lily appeared at the cemetery with your mother's will, and suddenly... He struggled to articulate the profound shift he'd experienced. It's like I've been given a second chance I never knew I needed. A chance to be a father, to right a terrible wrong, to help you fight this disease. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. And if I don't beat it, what then? You will, Blake said firmly, taking her hand. But if the worst happens, I swear to you, Sarah, Lily will never lack for love or protection. I'll raise her to know how brave and strong her mother was, how much you loved her. A commotion in the hallway interrupted their moment. Blake turned to see Davis at the door, his expression urgent. Sir, we have a situation. Victoria Chambers is here. She's demanding to see you, causing quite a scene. Blake's jaw tightened. How did she find me? Unclear, sir. But hospital security is struggling to contain the situation discreetly. Blake turned back to Sarah, whose face had paled. I'll handle this. Blake, Sarah caught his arm. Be careful. She's more dangerous than either of us realized. With a reassuring nod to Sarah, Blake followed Davis to the hospital lobby, where Victoria Chambers stood arguing with security personnel. Even in distress, she was immaculately dressed in a Chanel suit, her dark hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She spotted Blake and broke off mid-sentence. Blake, thank God, tell these people who I am. Blake approached slowly, his face expressionless. "It's all right," he told security. "I'll speak with Miss Chambers privately." He led her to a small waiting area, dismissing everyone except Davis, who remained discreetly by the door. Blake. "Darling, I've been frantic," Victoria began, reaching for his hands. "I heard you never returned to New York after the funeral. Then rumors about you visiting Sarah Miller? What's going on?" Blake stepped back, avoiding her touch. "How did you know I was here, Victoria?" She blinked, momentarily thrown by his coldness. "I was concerned. I had our security team track your phone. For your safety, of course." "My safety," Blake repeated flatly. How thoughtful. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand fluttered to her throat. "Blake, you're scaring me." "You're acting strangely. Is this grief?" "Because if so, I understand completely." "Do you?" Blake interrupted. "Do you understand grief, Victoria? Or is it just another emotion you simulate when convenient?" Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "I'm here because I care about you, because I'm worried. After losing Elizabeth, to suddenly disappear and show up at the hospital bedside of an ex-girlfriend." "Not just an ex-girlfriend," Blake said quietly. "The mother of my child." Victoria froze, her composure slipping for a microsecond before she recovered. "What child?" "Blake, you can't have children. You know that." The specialists confirmed. "The specialists you paid to lie," Blake finished, watching her face closely. "The same way you paid people to intercept Sarah's messages 7 years ago, to fabricate evidence of her infidelity, to ensure I would never know about my daughter." Victoria's mask cracked momentarily, a flash of calculation crossing her features before she summoned tears. "These are awful accusations." "Blake, you're not thinking clearly. Grief can make people paranoid, susceptible to manipulation. Whatever Sarah has told you—" "Sarah told me nothing," Blake cut in. "Eleanor Miller left quite a paper trail, though. Bank transfers, emails, recorded conversations, even a confession from Dr. Winters about falsifying my fertility tests." The color drained from Victoria's face. She glanced toward the exit, where Davis stood blocking the way. "Blake," she tried again, her voice softer, intimate. "We have history. Whatever mistakes I may have made were out of love for you. You have to believe that. Love?" Blake's voice was dangerously quiet. "You stole 7 years of my daughter's life from me. You manipulated Sarah into believing I had abandoned her when she was pregnant. You created an elaborate lie about my infertility that affected my entire relationship with Elizabeth. That's not love, Victoria. That's pathology." Victoria's demeanor changed instantly, the vulnerability vanishing like a switched-off light. Her eyes hardened, her posture stiffened. "Prove it, any of it. Eleanor Miller is dead. Your word against mine, Blake. And who seems more rational right now? The grieving widower having a breakdown, or the concerned friend?" Blake smiled coldly. "You always did underestimate your opponents, Victoria. That will be your downfall." He nodded to Davis, who approached with a small recording device. "Every word of this conversation has been documented. Combined with Eleanor's evidence, it paints quite a picture." For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Victoria's face. "You wouldn't expose this. Think of the scandal. The damage to Harrison Technologies." "Perhaps," Blake acknowledged. "Or perhaps justice matters more than stock prices. Either way, you're finished at my company. Security has already cleared your office. Your credentials have been revoked." Victoria's composure finally shattered. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I made you, Blake. Without me, you'd still be running that pathetic startup out of your garage. I brought in the investors, made the connections, and now you're selling company secrets to Axiom," Blake finished. "Yes, we know about that too." Victoria paled, then quickly rallied. "This isn't over," she said, gathering her purse. "Not by a long shot." As she stalked toward the exit, Blake called after her. "One more thing, Victoria. Stay away from Sarah. Stay away from Lily. If you come near my family again, I'll burn every bridge you've ever built in this industry." "That's not a threat. It's a promise." After she'd gone, Blake leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Davis approached cautiously. "Are you all right, sir?" Blake straightened, his resolve hardening. "Have security doubled at Sarah's room and notify the hospital to restrict all visitors." Then contact Judge Harmon. Tell him it's an emergency. I want those custody papers expedited today. As Davis hurried to execute his orders, Blake took a moment to process what had just happened. Victoria now knew about Lily, and a cornered Victoria was dangerous. The stakes had just been raised significantly. He needed to move quickly. Get Sarah to MD Anderson. Secure Lily's custody. Protect them both from Victoria's inevitable retaliation. The grief of losing Elizabeth still weighed heavily on his heart. But alongside it now burned a fierce protective instinct he'd never experienced before. Someone had tried to destroy lives through manipulation and deceit. That someone had succeeded for 7 years. But not anymore. Not on his watch. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. 3 days later, Blake stood at the window of his Four Seasons suite, watching Boston come alive in the early morning light. Behind him, Lily slept peacefully in the second bedroom, finally secured under his temporary custody after Judge Harmon had reviewed the expedited DNA results confirming Blake's paternity. The past 72 hours had been a whirlwind of legal meetings, medical consultations, and logistics planning. Blake had barely slept, driven by an urgency he couldn't fully explain. Perhaps it was the knowledge that Victoria wouldn't remain quiet for long. Perhaps it was Sarah's increasingly fragile condition. Or perhaps it was simply the surreal nature of his new reality. A reality in which he was now responsible for a 5-year-old daughter he hadn't known existed a week ago. His phone vibrated with a text from Jennifer. Judge signed final custody papers. You're officially Lily's legal guardian while Sarah undergoes treatment. Congratulations, Dad. Blake stared at the word Dad for a long moment, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Joy, terror, determination, grief for Elizabeth, who would never know about Lily, who had wanted children so badly. A small sound from the doorway made him turn. Lily stood there in flower-patterned pajamas, her blonde hair tousled from sleep, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Good morning, Blake said softly. Did you sleep okay? Lily nodded. Your beds are softer than the other place. She padded across the room and climbed onto the sofa, tucking her feet under her. Can we see Mommy today? Absolutely. Right after breakfast. Blake hesitated, then sat beside her. Lily, I need to tell you something important. The doctors think your mom needs special medicine that they only have in another hospital in Texas. It's called MD Anderson. Lily's brow furrowed. Texas is far away. It is, Blake agreed. But I've arranged for a special airplane to take us all there today. You, me, and your mom. Lily brightened. A real airplane? I've never been on one before. A real airplane, Blake confirmed. And we'll be staying in a nice house near the hospital so you can visit your mom every day while she gets her special medicine. Lily considered this information. Will I go to school there? The question caught Blake off guard. In the whirlwind of the past few days, he hadn't thought about ordinary details like school. We'll figure that out once we're settled. Maybe a tutor at first, until we know how long we'll be staying. Lily nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense. Mommy says I'm very smart. I can already read chapter books. Is that so? Blake smiled. Maybe you can read to your mom in the hospital. I bet she'd like that. Lily's expression grew serious. Is Mommy going to get better? Grandma didn't get better even with medicine. The directness of the question hit Blake like a physical blow. He considered deflecting or offering empty reassurances, but something in Lily's steady gaze, so like his own mother's, demanded honesty. The doctors are going to try their very best medicine, he said carefully. This hospital in Texas has helped many people with illnesses like your mom's, but I can't promise what will happen. What I can promise is that I'll be here for you no matter what. Lily absorbed this, then asked quietly, Because you're my dad? Yes, Blake said, his throat tight. Because I'm your dad. Lily moved closer and laid her head against his arm. The gesture, so simple and trusting, nearly undid him. They sat in silence for a moment before Lily spoke again. Can I have pancakes for breakfast? With blueberries? That's what Mommy makes on special days. Blake smiled, grateful for the shift to easier territory. Pancakes with blueberries it is. While Lily ate breakfast, Blake checked in with Davis about security arrangements and then called Sarah's doctor. The medical transport to Houston was scheduled for noon, with all the necessary equipment to ensure Sarah's comfort during the flight. The oncologist at MD Anderson had already reviewed her case and was optimistic about the experimental protocol, a cutting-edge combination of immunotherapy and targeted genetic treatments that had shown promising results in early trials. After breakfast, Blake and Lily headed to the hospital for one final visit before the transfer. In the car, Lily chattered about the airplane trip, her excitement palpable. Blake marveled at her resilience, how quickly she had adapted to him, to their new arrangement, despite the upheaval in her young life. At the hospital, they found Sarah sitting up in bed, her few belongings packed in a small duffel bag. She looked pale but determined, her smile warming as Lily rushed to embrace her. "Mommy, we're going on an airplane today. A special one just for us." Sarah hugged her daughter close. "I know, sweetheart. Isn't that exciting?" While Lily settled in to show Sarah her drawings from the hotel, Blake conferred with the medical team in the hallway. Dr. Patel, Sarah's oncologist, reviewed the transfer protocols one final time. "We've stabilized her as much as possible for the journey," he explained. MD Anderson is expecting her arrival and will begin evaluation immediately. "The trial protocol is aggressive, Mr. Harrison, but it's her best chance." Blake nodded. "And the prognosis?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "Without this treatment, Ms. Miller's 5-year survival rate would be less than 20%. The trial could potentially double or even triple those odds, but it's experimental for a reason. There are no guarantees." "I understand," Blake said grimly. "What about side effects? Recovery time?" The treatment combines targeted therapies with immunotherapy, which can cause significant side effects: fatigue, nausea, potential organ inflammation. Most patients require at least 6 months of treatment, followed by ongoing monitoring. It's a difficult road. Blake absorbed this information, already mentally adjusting his plans for the coming months. "Thank you for your candor, doctor, and for your care of Sarah these past weeks." Back in Sarah's room, Blake found her gently explaining the upcoming treatment to Lily, who was listening with the solemn attention children sometimes give to adult matters they don't fully comprehend. "The medicine might make me feel yucky sometimes," Sarah was saying. "I might be very tired or need to sleep a lot. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see you or that I love you any less." "I know," Lily said confidently. "And I can bring you pictures and read you stories when you're tired." Sarah smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That sounds perfect." Blake stepped fully into the room, feeling like an intruder on this intimate moment between mother and daughter. But Sarah looked up and extended her hand to him, including him in their circle. "Blake has been telling me about the house he found for us in Houston," she told Lily. "It has a swimming pool." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Can I swim every day?" "We'll see," Blake said, meeting Sarah's gaze with silent gratitude for her effort to include him. "Maybe swimming lessons first?" The transfer team arrived shortly after, preparing Sarah for transport to the private airfield where Blake's jet waited. As they wheeled her, gurney toward the elevator, Blake's security chief approached urgently. "Sir, we have a situation. Victoria Chambers is attempting to file an emergency injunction to prevent Lily's removal from Massachusetts. Her legal team is claiming you're violating custody agreements by taking the child out of state." Blake's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. There are no existing custody agreements except the ones Judge Harmon just signed giving me guardianship. Her lawyers are claiming the DNA evidence was rushed and potentially compromised. They're demanding independent verification." Sarah, who had overheard this exchange, looked alarmed. "Blake, she's trying to separate us. If Lily stays here while I go to Houston—" "That's not going to happen," Blake assured her firmly. He turned to Davis. "Get Judge Harmon on the phone immediately, and have security escort Victoria's legal team from the hospital premises if they show up." While Davis made the call, Blake knelt beside Lily, who had been watching the adults with growing confusion. "Everything's okay, sweetheart. There's just a little mix-up with some papers. We're still all going to Texas together." Lily nodded, though her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. "Promise?" "I promise," Blake said, more determined than ever to keep his word. Judge Harmon, thankfully, was both efficient and unimpressed by Victoria's legal maneuvering. He rejected the emergency injunction within the hour, reaffirming Blake's temporary guardianship and explicitly authorizing Lily's travel to Texas for her mother's medical treatment. By noon, they were airborne, Sarah comfortably settled in the jet's converted medical bay with a flight nurse in attendance. Lily sat wide-eyed by the window, watching the clouds with wonder, occasionally reporting interesting sights to her mother. Blake sat across from them, working on his laptop, occasionally looking up to find Sarah watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked softly when Lily was distracted by the lunch service. "You've completely upended your life for us," Sarah said. "In less than a week, you've gone from grieving widower to fighting for custody of a child you just met, arranging experimental cancer treatment, and relocating to another state." "Why?" Blake considered her question carefully. "I spent 7 years believing I couldn't have children. Elizabeth and I tried everything, fertility treatments, specialists, even began discussing adoption. When she fell ill, that dream died too." He looked at Lily, who was carefully unwrapping her sandwich. Then suddenly there she was, standing in the rain at Elizabeth's funeral. "My daughter. A miracle I never knew I had. But the cost to you, your company, your home in New York. Harrison Technologies has excellent leadership. I can work remotely, and homes are just buildings." Blake leaned forward. "Sarah, when I thought I'd lost Elizabeth, I couldn't imagine feeling anything but grief again. But when I look at Lily, when I see you fighting so hard—" He paused, struggling to articulate the profound shift in his emotional landscape. "It's like I've been given a second chance I never expected. A chance to be a father, to right a terrible wrong, to help you fight this disease." Sarah held his gaze, her eyes soft with understanding. "Thank you," she said simply. The flight to Houston took just under 4 hours. Upon landing, a medical team was waiting to transfer Sarah to MD Anderson, while Blake and Lily followed in a chauffeured SUV. The Texas heat hit them like a wall as they exited the air-conditioned terminal, the late afternoon sun blazing overhead. "It's hot," Lily observed unnecessarily, pressing her face against the car window as they drove through Houston's sprawling medical center. "Very different from Boston," Blake agreed, "but you'll get used to it." The house Blake had leased was in West University Place, an upscale neighborhood just minutes from the hospital. A Spanish-style villa with terracotta roof tiles and a secluded backyard with the promised swimming pool. As they pulled into the circular driveway, Lily's eyes grew wide. "We're going to live here? It looks like a castle." Blake smiled at her enthusiasm. "For as long as we need to be in Houston, yes. Would you like to pick your bedroom? There are 4 to choose from." While Lily explored the house with the nanny Blake had hired, he conferred with Davis about security arrangements. Victoria's legal challenge, though unsuccessful, had made it clear she wasn't going to give up easily. Blake wasn't taking any chances. "The perimeter is secured," Davis reported. "Surveillance cameras cover all entry points. I've hired local security personnel with medical center experience to supplement our team. They'll work in shifts 24/7. Blake nodded, satisfied. "And Sarah's security at the hospital?" "In place. No one gets access to her floor without prior authorization from you or her medical team." "Good." Blake glanced at his watch. "I should get back to the hospital." The doctors wanted to begin evaluation immediately. At MD Anderson, Blake found Sarah already settled in a private room, surrounded by medical equipment. Dr. Emily Rodriguez, the lead oncologist for the experimental trial, was reviewing scans on a tablet. "Mr. Harrison?" she greeted him. "We were just discussing Ms. Miller's treatment plan." Sarah looked exhausted but alert. "Dr. Rodriguez thinks I'm a good candidate for the trial. They'll start preliminary treatments tomorrow." Dr. Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, elaborated. "We'll begin with a targeted therapy designed to attack the specific genetic mutations in Sarah's cancer cells. followed by immunotherapy to boost her natural defenses. The protocol is intensive. Daily treatments for the first month, then a reevaluation to determine next steps. And the success rate? Blake asked. In our Phase Y trial, we saw tumor regression in 63% of patients with similar genetic profiles to Sarah's, complete remission in 28%. Dr. Rodriguez's expression was professional but compassionate. These are promising numbers for late-stage ovarian cancer, but I want to be clear about the challenges ahead. The treatment is grueling. There will be difficult days. Blake nodded, processing this information. Whatever resources you need, additional specialists, equipment, research funding, just say the word. Dr. Rodriguez smiled slightly. Your financial support of our research program is already noted and appreciated, Mr. Harrison. The best thing you can do now is help Sarah maintain her strength and positive outlook. Those factors significantly impact treatment outcomes. After the doctor left, Blake sat beside Sarah's bed. How are you really feeling? Sarah attempted a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Terrified, hopeful, exhausted, grateful. She looked around the hospital room. This is all so surreal. A week ago, I was trying to figure out how to pay my rent while on medical leave, worrying about what would happen to Lily if... She didn't finish the sentence. And now we're in Houston, in one of the best cancer centers in the world, with you suddenly back in our lives. Blake took her hand gently. I know it's overwhelming. For all of us. But we'll take it one day at a time. Sarah squeezed his hand. How's Lily settling in? Exploring the house, choosing which bedroom has the best view of the pool. She's remarkably adaptable. She's had to be, Sarah said softly. Between my illness and losing my mother, children are resilient, but they shouldn't have to be. Blake nodded, thinking of his own disrupted childhood after his father's departure. I've arranged for a child psychologist to visit tomorrow. Someone who specializes in helping kids cope with family medical crises. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You've thought of everything. Not everything, Blake admitted. I'm learning as I go. Earlier today, Lily asked about school, and I realized I hadn't considered it at all. Sarah smiled. She's been obsessing about kindergarten since her friend Zoe started last fall. I've been homeschooling her as much as I could, but with my treatments. I'll find the best schools in the area, Blake assured her. Or tutors, whatever works best. We can make decisions together. Sarah studied his face. You're different, Blake. Softer somehow, despite everything you've been through. Blake considered this. Elizabeth changed me, he said quietly. She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. That letting people in doesn't mean losing control. He smiled sadly. I wish you could have known her. You would have liked each other. Sarah reached for his hand again. Thank you for telling me about her. And Blake, I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to deal with all of this while still grieving. The genuine compassion in her voice, from a woman facing her own mortality no less, touched Blake deeply. One day at a time, he repeated. That's all any of us can do. A knock at the door announced the arrival of a nurse with medications. Blake stood to leave, promising to bring Lily for a visit the next morning. As he drove back to the house, Blake's phone rang with a call from Jennifer in New York. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Victoria's legal challenge in Boston was just the beginning. She's now filed a complaint with the SEC, alleging you misappropriated company resources for personal use and concealed material information from the board. Blake's grip tightened on the steering wheel. That's absurd. Absurd, but potentially damaging. The board is requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow. I'll video conference in, Blake decided. What else? Jennifer hesitated. There's a rumor she's planning to talk to the press. A tell-all about your relationship and the real reasons behind your hasty departure from New York. Blake felt cold anger rising. Victoria was escalating just as he'd feared, using every weapon in her considerable arsenal to strike back. Prepare a full legal response, he instructed. And Jennifer, it's time to use Eleanor Miller's evidence. All of it. Victoria wanted a war. She's got one. As he hung up, Blake realized with grim clarity that his battle on multiple fronts was just beginning. Sarah's cancer, Lily's emotional well-being, Victoria's vengeful campaign, the board's concerns. Each alone would be challenging enough. Together, they created a perfect storm that would test every resource and ounce of strength he possessed. Yet as he pulled into the driveway of their temporary home and saw Lily waiting expectantly at the window, Blake felt an unfamiliar sense of purpose. For the first time since Elizabeth's passing, he had something irreplaceable to fight for. A family he never knew he had. A future he never expected to find. Whatever Victoria might throw at them, whatever challenges Sarah's treatment might bring, Blake Harrison would not be defeated. Not again. Not when the stakes were this high. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. 2 weeks into their new life in Houston, Blake sat in his improvised home office, video conferencing with his executive team in New York. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the scattered papers and coffee cups that evidenced his late night. Through the glass doors leading to the backyard, he could see Lily's swimming instructor guiding her through basic strokes in the pool, a small moment of normalcy in their otherwise upended lives. "The SEC inquiry is proceeding," Jennifer informed him. "Our legal team has submitted all requested documentation proving company resources were properly allocated. Victoria's allegations are baseless, but the investigation itself is creating market uncertainty." Blake nodded grimly. Harrison Technologies' stock had dropped 12% since Victoria's accusations went public. The board was nervous, shareholders were asking questions, and competitors were circling like sharks scenting blood. "What about the countersuit?" "Filed yesterday. Breach of confidentiality, corporate espionage, defamation. The evidence from Eleanor Miller's files is compelling, especially combined with the recorded conversations we obtained. Victoria's attorneys have already reached out about a potential settlement." "No settlements," Blake said firmly. "She tried to destroy my family once. I won't give her the opportunity again." The meeting continued with updates on various projects and the company's quarterly projections. Blake's COO, Marcus Chen, had stepped up admirably in his absence, keeping operations running smoothly despite the turbulence. Still, there was growing pressure for Blake to return to New York, at least temporarily. "The Axiom deal needs your personal attention," Marcus explained. "They're getting cold feet with all the negative press. If we lose this acquisition, our position in the European market will be significantly compromised." Blake rubbed his temples, feeling the competing pressures of his professional and personal responsibilities. "I understand. Let me think about a brief trip next week. I need to coordinate with Sarah's medical team first." After the call ended, Blake stepped outside to watch Lily's lesson. Her progress in just 2 weeks was remarkable. From fear of putting her face in the water to confidently paddling across the shallow end with minimal assistance. She spotted him and waved excitedly. "Daddy! Look what I can do!" The word daddy still caught him off guard each time she used it. It had emerged naturally about a week after they arrived in Houston, and Blake had felt an indescribable surge of emotion the first time she'd said it. "I'm watching, sweetheart," he called back, settling into a poolside chair as Lily demonstrated her newly acquired floating skills. The swimming instructor, a college student named Tara, smiled at Blake. "She's a natural, Mr. Harrison. Most kids her age are much more hesitant." "She gets her determination from her mother," Blake said, realizing as he spoke how true it was. He'd witnessed Sarah's fierce will these past weeks as she endured the grueling initial phase of her treatment, never complaining despite the obvious toll it was taking. After the lesson, Blake helped Lily towel off and change for their daily hospital visit. These visits had become the cornerstone of their routine, a sacred time when their fragile new family unit could be together, despite the clinical setting. "I made Mommy a new picture," Lily announced, carefully placing a colorful drawing in a folder to protect it from creases. "It's the 3 of us at the beach." Blake glanced at the childish illustration, 3 stick figures holding hands beside blue water, the tallest labeled Daddy, the middle one, Mommy, and the smallest, Me. The simple drawing captured a future that remained uncertain but that they all desperately hoped for. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely. "She's going to love it." At MD Anderson, they found Sarah sitting up in a recliner instead of her bed, a small victory. Though the treatment had taken its expected toll, her face was gaunt, her remaining hair thin, her complexion sallow, her eyes brightened at the sight of them. "There's my little mermaid." She greeted Lily, who ran to carefully hug her. "How was your swimming lesson?" While Lily enthusiastically described her aquatic achievements, Blake conferred quietly with Dr. Rodriguez in the hallway. "The initial response is encouraging," the oncologist reported, showing Blake the latest scan results. "We're seeing reduction in tumor size already, which is a positive indicator. Her body is tolerating the immunotherapy better than many patients, though the side effects remain significant." "And the prognosis?" Blake asked, the question that perpetually hovered at the edge of every medical conversation. Dr. Rodriguez's expression was cautiously optimistic. "If she continues responding at this rate, I'd say her odds are improving beyond our initial estimates. But Blake," she added, using his first name as they had become quite familiar over the past weeks, "we're still very early in the protocol. There will be setbacks. Prepare yourself and Lily for that reality." Blake nodded, the familiar mixture of hope and fear churning in his stomach. "I appreciate your candor as always." Back in Sarah's room, he found Lily carefully explaining her drawing, pointing out details only visible to her imagination. Sarah listened with exaggerated interest, asking questions that delighted her daughter, somehow summoning the energy to be fully present despite her exhaustion. Blake marveled at their bond, at the way Sarah could set aside her own suffering to nurture Lily's spirit. It was a kind of strength he'd rarely witnessed in his corporate world of power moves and strategic advantages. "And see, Daddy's holding both our hands because he's keeping us safe," Lily was explaining, pointing to her drawing. Sarah glanced up at Blake, a complex emotion in her eyes. "Yes, he is," she agreed softly. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of a nurse with Sarah's afternoon medications. Lily, accustomed to this routine, settled into a chair with a book while Blake stepped into the corridor to take a call from Davis. "Sir, we have a situation," his security chief reported. "Ms. Chambers gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal. It's going online within the hour." Blake's jaw tightened. "How bad?" She's painting herself as the victim of your midlife crisis. Claims you abandoned the company to chase a fantasy family life after your wife's passing. Implies your judgment is compromised by grief. She's careful to avoid outright lies that could trigger a libel suit, but the narrative is damaging." "And Sarah and Lily?" She refers to them only obliquely, a former girlfriend with convenient timing, and a child whose paternity was hastily established. But the implication is clear that she believes you're being manipulated. Blake fought to control his anger. "Contact our PR team. I want a measured response, focusing on the SEC investigation, clearing me of wrongdoing, and emphasizing my continued leadership despite working remotely. No direct references to Victoria or her allegations. We won't dignify them with specific denials." After ending the call, Blake leaned against the wall, momentarily overwhelmed. The past 2 weeks had been a constant juggling act, managing Sarah's medical care, helping Lily adjust to their new reality, running his company remotely while defending against Victoria's attacks. He was exhausted, stretched thin across competing priorities, trying to be CEO, caregiver, and newly minted father simultaneously. A light touch on his arm startled him. Sarah stood there, leaning on an IV pole for support, concern etched on her pale face. "You should be resting," he chided gently. "I heard you on the phone," Sarah said. "Victoria again?" Blake sighed, not wanting to burden her with additional worries. "Nothing I can't handle." "Blake." Her voice was soft but firm. "You don't have to protect me from reality. We're in this together." The simple declaration touched him deeply. He led her back to her recliner before answering. Victoria gave an interview trying to undermine my leadership and question my motives for being here. Sarah's expression darkened. She won't stop, will she? No, Blake admitted. Not until she has nothing left to lose. I've been thinking about your company situation, Sarah said, surprising him. You should go to New York next week. The Axiom deal is too important to lose. Blake blinked. You've been eavesdropping on my work calls? Sarah smiled weakly. These walls are thin and your voice carries when you're stressed. Besides, I used to follow Harrison Technologies even before all this. The Axiom acquisition has been in the business news for months. Blake was touched by her consideration. The deal can wait. You and Lily need me here. We'll be fine for a few days, Sarah insisted. Lily has her routine with the nanny and her swimming lessons. I have the best medical team in the country. But your company, your life's work, needs you too. Before Blake could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. WSJ piece just published. Board calling emergency meeting tomorrow. Sarah read his expression accurately. Go, Blake. It's okay to have multiple priorities. We're not going anywhere. Later that evening, after putting Lily to bed with her nightly story, a ritual Blake had quickly grown to treasure, he sat on the patio, nursing a glass of bourbon and contemplating Sarah's words. The Texas night was warm, stars visible despite Houston's light pollution. Crickets providing a gentle soundtrack to his thoughts. His phone rang, Marcus calling from New York despite the late hour. The board is split, his COO reported without preamble. Half are concerned about the company's stability with you working remotely during this personal crisis, as they're calling it. The other half are defending your right to handle family matters while continuing to lead strategically. And Axiom? Getting nervous. Their CEO wants face-to-face assurance that our company leadership is stable before proceeding. The WSJ piece didn't help. Blake made a decision. Book the jet for Monday morning. I'll come to New York for 3 days, meet with the board and Axiom personally, then return to Houston. After ending the call, Blake leaned back in his chair, contemplating the stars. 3 months ago, his life had seemed perfectly ordered, a successful company, a happy marriage, a clear future path. Now everything was uncertainty. Sarah's treatment, Lily's adjustment, Victoria's vendetta, the company's stability. Yet amidst the chaos, something new was emerging, a sense of family he hadn't experienced since childhood. The joy on Lily's face when she mastered a new swimming technique, the quiet conversations with Sarah during hospital visits, the growing sense that the three of them were navigating this storm together, becoming something more than individuals thrown together by circumstance. Monday morning arrived with the controlled chaos of departure preparations. Blake had explained to Lily that he needed to take a short trip to New York for work, promising to call every night for her bedtime story. The 5-year-old had taken the news with surprising maturity, extracting only a pinky promise that he would return in exactly 3 days. At the hospital, his goodbye to Sarah was more complicated. I've briefed the medical team that you're my proxy while I'm gone, he told her, reviewing a detailed schedule of Lily's activities that he'd prepared for the nanny. Davis will remain here with a full security detail. If anything changes with your condition, anything at all, they'll contact me immediately. Sarah watched his meticulous preparations with a mixture of amusement and affection. We survived for 5 years without your color-coded schedules, you know. Blake looked up, momentarily abashed by his controlling tendencies. Force of habit. I'm not very good at letting go of the reins. I've noticed, Sarah teased gently. Then more seriously. Blake, what happens after? If my treatment works, if I go into remission, what then? We can't live in limbo forever. The question caught him off guard. They'd been so focused on the immediate medical crisis that they rarely discussed the future beyond the next treatment milestone. What do you want to happen? Sarah considered this. I want Lily to have stability, a real home, not a temporary rental, a school she can attend long-term, friends who won't disappear when the next crisis hits. She hesitated. And I want clarity about us, about where we stand. Blake sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand. When I first learned about Lily, about what Victoria had done, I thought this was about justice, righting a wrong, fulfilling my responsibility. But it's become more than that. He struggled to articulate the evolution of his feelings. These past weeks, watching you fight so courageously, seeing Lily grow and adapt, it's changed me. You've both changed me. Is that a good thing? Sarah asked softly. The best thing, Blake assured her. When I return from New York, let's talk seriously about the future. All the options. No conditions or obligations, just honest conversation about what might be best for all of us. Sarah nodded, seemingly satisfied. Be careful in New York. Victoria won't have given up. I can handle Victoria, Blake said with more confidence than he felt. Sarah's expression turned serious. Don't underestimate her, Blake. She's had 7 years to perfect her tactics, and wounded pride can make people dangerous. As if on cue, Blake's phone buzzed with a news alert. Harrison Technologies Board considers leadership change amid CEO's personal crisis. Sarah read the headline over his shoulder and squeezed his hand. Go win them back. Show them the Blake Harrison. I remember. The one who could charm investors with a 5-minute pitch and make competitors rethink their entire strategy with a single decision. Blake smiled at her faith in him. I'll be back in 3 days. Exactly 3 days. I pinky promised Lily. We'll be counting the hours, Sarah replied, her smile not quite hiding the worry in her eyes. The flight to New York gave Blake time to prepare his strategy for the board meeting and the Axiom negotiations. Jennifer had sent detailed briefings on each board member's current concerns and the specific sticking points in the acquisition deal. It was familiar territory for Blake, the corporate chess game he had mastered years ago. Yet, as his jet began its descent into New York, Blake found himself less focused on boardroom tactics than on the 5-year-old who had extracted a solemn pinky promise from him that morning. Lily had stood in the driveway, her small hand raised with pinky extended, her expression utterly serious as she made him swear to return in 3 sleeps, not 4. His phone chimed with a text message from the nanny, a photo of Lily at her swimming lesson, beaming with pride as she floated independently for the first time. The caption read, "Wanted to show her daddy her new trick." Blake saved the image, his heart full with an unfamiliar sensation. In the competitive, often cutthroat world he had inhabited for decades, vulnerability had always been weakness. Yet here he was, utterly vulnerable to a small child's smile, to a woman's courageous battle, to the fragile possibility of a family he never expected. As the Manhattan skyline came into view, Blake straightened his tie and steeled himself for the battles ahead. Victoria had made her move. Now it was his turn. And this time, he wasn't fighting just for his company or his reputation. He was fighting for his family. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. New York greeted Blake with its familiar cacophony, honking taxis, bustling pedestrians, the relentless energy that had once fueled his ambitions. Now, after weeks in Houston's more measured pace, the city felt overwhelming, almost hostile in its intensity. The Harrison Technologies headquarters dominated its corner of Midtown. 68 stories of glass and steel that Blake had commissioned at the height of his success 5 years earlier. As his car pulled up to the private entrance, he felt a strange disconnection. This building had once been the center of his universe, the physical manifestation of everything he'd achieved. Now it felt like visiting a former home after moving away. Marcus met him in the private elevator. Good flight? Blake nodded, scanning the briefing notes one last time. Boards assembled, waiting in the main conference room. Full attendance, including those calling for your temporary replacement. Marcus lowered his voice. Victoria's been busy while you've been gone. 3 board members who were firmly in your corner are now wavering. Which ones? Hendricks, Lowell, and Cheng. Blake's jaw tightened. All 3 had long-standing personal relationships with him. Their hesitation indicated just how effective Victoria's campaign had been. And she's not attending? Conspicuously absent. Her attorney sent notice that she's recusing herself due to personal conflict, but she's been calling board members individually all week. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, where Jennifer waited with additional updates. Blake listened while they walked, mentally adjusting his strategy based on this new intelligence. By the time they reached the conference room doors, he was ready. The boardroom fell silent as Blake entered. 12 faces turned toward him, some supportive, others skeptical, a few openly hostile. He took his customary seat at the head of the table, projecting a calm confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Thank you all for accommodating my schedule," he began, his voice steady. "I understand there are concerns about my leadership during this period of personal transition and about the allegations Ms. Chambers has made publicly. Let me address both directly." For the next 30 minutes, Blake laid out a comprehensive overview of the situation, his discovery of Lily's existence, the DNA confirmation, Sarah's medical condition, and his arrangements to manage the company remotely while addressing these family responsibilities. He was candid yet controlled, acknowledging the unexpected nature of the circumstances while emphasizing his continued commitment to Harrison Technologies. "As for Ms. Chambers' allegations," he continued, his tone hardening slightly, "the SEC investigation has already cleared me of any financial impropriety. Her claims about my mental state and decision-making capacity are subjective attempts to undermine my leadership for personal gain." Richard Hendricks, one of the wavering board members, leaned forward. "Blake, no one questions your integrity or commitment. But this situation is unprecedented. A child you never knew existed, a former girlfriend with advanced cancer, a coast-to-coast commute during the most significant acquisition in our company's history. The timing couldn't be worse." "I'm not disputing the challenges," Blake acknowledged. "But consider this. In the 3 weeks since I've been working remotely from Houston, our quarterly projections have exceeded expectations. The SEC investigation has been resolved favorably, and the Axiom deal has progressed to final negotiations. Results speak louder than concerns about my physical location." The discussion continued, with various board members expressing their perspectives. Some were supportive, commending Blake's handling of a difficult personal situation while maintaining professional responsibilities. Others remained skeptical, questioning whether the company needed more consistent leadership during this critical period. Finally, Diane Lowell, another of the wavering members, asked the question hovering beneath the surface. "What are your long-term intentions, Blake? If Ms. Miller's treatment is successful, will you be returning to New York? Or are we looking at a permanent remote arrangement?" The question struck at the heart of Blake's unresolved future. He hadn't discussed permanent plans with Sarah yet, had barely begun to contemplate what their lives might look like beyond the immediate medical crisis. "My immediate priority is ensuring Ms. Miller receives the treatment she needs and that my daughter has stability during this transition," he answered carefully. "Beyond that, I'm exploring various arrangements that would allow me to fulfill both my personal and professional responsibilities. What I can promise is transparency as those plans develop." After nearly 2 hours of discussion, the board voted on a resolution of confidence in Blake's leadership. It passed, though more narrowly than he would have liked, 8 in favor, 4 against. Not the resounding endorsement he might once have commanded, but enough to maintain his position and authority. As the meeting adjourned, Blake remained in the conference room, reviewing notes for his upcoming meeting with Axiom's CEO. Jennifer stayed behind, waiting until the last board member had departed before speaking. "That went as well as could be expected, but we're not out of the woods. Victoria's allies on the board will continue pushing for interim leadership if you remain in Houston long-term." Blake nodded, unsurprised. "What's her endgame here? She must know she can't actually take control of the company." "Power, revenge, financial gain, probably all 3, Jennifer assessed. The timing of her stock sales suggests she's positioning herself for a significant move. Our intelligence indicates she's been in talks with Grayson Venture Partners." Blake's eyes narrowed. Grayson was a notoriously aggressive private equity firm specializing in hostile takeovers. She's helping them build a case for acquiring Harrison Technologies, feeding them insider information, undermining confidence in leadership to drive down the stock price. That would be my assessment, Jennifer agreed. The question is, how do we counter it? Before Blake could respond, his phone rang, Dr. Rodriguez calling from Houston. He felt a surge of alarm as he answered. Is everything all right? Yes and no, the oncologist replied. Sarah's latest blood work shows some concerning markers. Her body is struggling with the treatment intensity. We need to adjust the protocol, which means extending the timeline. I've discussed it with her, but I thought you should know. Blake's mind raced with implications. What does this mean for her prognosis? It's a setback, not a catastrophe, Dr. Rodriguez assured him. But recovery will likely take longer than our initial estimates. We're looking at several more months of treatment minimum. I understand. Thank you for calling personally. Blake ended the call and looked up to find Jennifer watching him with concern. Sarah? She asked. Blake nodded, sharing the update. I need to extend my time in Houston indefinitely. Jennifer didn't react with surprise or dismay, simply acceptance. Then we adapt. Remote leadership infrastructure, enhanced communication protocols, strategic appearances in New York when absolutely necessary. If the results remain strong, the board will adjust to the new normal. Blake felt a rush of gratitude for her pragmatic support. Schedule a call with Marcus. We need to accelerate the Axiom closing before Victoria can cause more damage. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Blake spoke briefly with Lily during her afternoon break, smiling as she enthusiastically described helping her swimming teacher with younger students. He tried calling Sarah afterward, but a nurse answered, explaining that she was sleeping after a difficult treatment session. That evening, alone in his Manhattan penthouse for the first time since Elizabeth's passing, Blake felt the full weight of his absence. The apartment was immaculate, maintained by staff during his absence, yet it felt sterile and lifeless. Elizabeth's touches were still everywhere, her favorite throws draped over furniture, her art collection adorning the walls, her books filling the shelves. But without her presence, these were just objects, museum pieces preserving a life that no longer existed. Blake wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, bourbon in hand. The city lights sparkled below, a view he had once found invigorating. Now he found himself thinking of the simple pleasure of reading bedtime stories to Lily, of quiet conversations with Sarah during hospital visits, of the small but meaningful ways they were becoming a family unit despite the circumstances. His phone chimed with an incoming email, photos from the nanny showing Lily's evening routine. She had insisted on making a welcome back card for when Blake returned. Her childish handwriting spelling out, "Hurry home, Daddy," surrounded by heart stickers. Blake found himself smiling at the screen, the empty apartment suddenly feeling even less like home. He had built his life and identity around success, around Harrison Technologies, around his marriage to Elizabeth. Now all of that was shifting, reconfiguring around new priorities he never could have anticipated. His reflections were interrupted by a text from Marcus. Chambers spotted having dinner with Grayson and Lowell at Le Bernardin. Developing. Blake's momentary peace evaporated. Diane Lowell was one of his wavering board members. Her dinner with Victoria and Grayson venture. Partners confirmed his worst suspicions. Victoria was orchestrating a coordinated effort to undermine his leadership and facilitate a hostile takeover. He dialed Marcus immediately. We need to accelerate our timeline. Move the Axiom signing to tomorrow if possible. And I want a full profile on Grayson's recent activities, acquisitions, attempted takeovers, financial position. After a series of late-night calls setting these wheels in motion, Blake finally tried to sleep, but rest proved elusive. His mind kept cycling through competing problems. Sarah's treatment setback, Victoria's machinations, Lily's need for stability, the company's vulnerable position. Around 3 a.m., he gave up and returned to his home office, working through contingency plans until dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in soft gold. By the time his car arrived to take him back to the office, Blake had mapped out a comprehensive strategy to counter Victoria's moves and protect both his company and his newfound family. The Axiom meeting was scheduled for noon, an accelerated timeline that had required considerable diplomatic maneuvering by Marcus. Blake spent the morning in briefings with his executive team, reviewing the final acquisition terms and preparing responses to potential concerns about leadership stability. Just as they were wrapping up, Jennifer entered with a tablet displaying a breaking news headline: Harrison Technologies facing potential class action, lawsuit over privacy breach. Blake scanned the article quickly, his expression darkening. This is manufactured. We haven't had any significant data incidents in over 2 years, and the one referenced here was fully disclosed and remediated. The timing is suspicious, Jennifer agreed. The lead plaintiff's attorney has connections to Grayson Venture Partners. They're trying to drive down our stock value before the Axiom deal closes. Blake checked the market reaction. Harrison Technologies shares had already dropped 3% in pre-market trading. Contact our legal team. Full response protocol. And get me everything we have on this alleged breach. I want to be prepared if Axiom raises concerns. The Axiom delegation arrived precisely at noon. CEO Richard Kwan and his executive team, accompanied by a phalanx of attorneys. Blake greeted them with practiced warmth, showing no sign of the pressure he was under. I appreciate you accommodating our accelerated timeline, he said as they settled in the conference room. I believe this acquisition represents a pivotal opportunity for both our companies. Richard Kwan, a shrewd businessman in his early 60s, came straight to the point. Before we proceed, I need to address the elephant in the room. The board confidence vote, your bicoastal arrangement, this morning's lawsuit announcement, these create uncertainty. Axiom doesn't invest in uncertainty, Blake. Understandable, Blake acknowledged. Let me address each concern directly. He spent the next 20 minutes laying out the facts behind the current situation, the board's vote of confidence, the robust remote leadership structure he had established, and the baseless nature of the just-announced lawsuit. He was candid about his personal circumstances, but emphatic about his continued leadership capacity. Unconventional situations call for unconventional solutions, he concluded. But the fundamentals haven't changed. Harrison Technologies remains the industry leader in security innovation. Our financial position is stronger than ever, and this acquisition represents the optimal pathway into European markets for both our companies. Kwan studied him thoughtfully. And your personal situation? How long do you anticipate dividing your attention between Houston and New York? My daughter will remain a permanent part of my life, Blake answered honestly. As for Ms. Miller's treatment, we're looking at an extended timeline. I won't misrepresent that reality. What I can guarantee is that my commitment to Harrison Technologies' success remains absolute, regardless of my physical location. The negotiation continued for several hours, with both sides working through the final details of the acquisition agreement. By late afternoon, they had reached consensus on all major points, with signing scheduled for the following morning. As the Axiom team departed, Marcus clapped Blake on the shoulder. Well done. If we close this tomorrow, Victoria's leverage with Grayson diminishes significantly. Blake nodded, checking his watch. It was nearly time for his promised bedtime story call with Lily. Let's not celebrate prematurely. A lot can happen between now and tomorrow's signing. He returned to his office to make the call in private. Smiling as Lily's face appeared on video, her blonde hair still damp from her evening bath. Daddy! Is it still your second sleepaway or the third one? Second sleep, sweetheart. One more night, and I'll be home tomorrow evening, just like I promised. Pinky promised, she corrected seriously. Pinky promised, Blake agreed. Now what story shall we read tonight? After reading Lily's chosen story, a tale about a brave princess who saved her kingdom from a dragon, Blake asked to speak with the nanny. How is she really doing? He asked once Lily was out of earshot. She's missing you, the nanny admitted. She's been sleeping with that welcome home card under her pillow. And she knows something's wrong with her mom's treatment, even though no one has told her directly. Children sense these things. I'll be home tomorrow, Blake assured her. Has she visited Sarah today? This morning. The visit was shorter than usual. Ms. Miller was very tired. Lily was quiet afterward. Blake felt a pang of guilt for not being there. "I'll call the hospital now. Thank you for taking such good care of her." His call to Sarah went to voicemail. She was likely resting after treatment. Blake left a message assuring her he'd be back the next evening and asked the night nurse for an update on her condition. "She's stable but struggling," the nurse reported. "The adjusted protocol is taking a toll. Dr. Rodriguez is monitoring her closely." Blake ended the call, feeling torn between his obligations in New York and his desire to be in Houston. The Axiom signing was critical for Harrison Technologies' future, yet Sarah's condition and Lily's emotional needs pulled at him with equal urgency. His contemplation was interrupted by Jennifer's arrival with troubling news. "Victoria's made another move. She's filed a formal ethics complaint against you with the Industry Regulatory Board, alleging you use company resources to investigate her personal history and financial dealings." Blake shook his head in disbelief. "The audacity is almost admirable. She's trying to keep me tied up in investigations and defensive maneuvers." "There's more," Jennifer continued grimly. "Our sources indicate Grayson is preparing to make an unsolicited offer for a controlling interest in Harrison Technologies immediately after market open tomorrow, before the Axiom signing." The implications were clear. A competing offer, even an unwelcome one, would legally require the board to postpone the Axiom closing to evaluate the alternative. The delay would create exactly the uncertainty that Victoria and Grayson were counting on to unravel the deal. "We need to move faster," Blake decided. "Contact Quan. I want to sign tonight. Dinner, drinks, whatever it takes to get his signature on that agreement before markets open tomorrow." Jennifer nodded, already typing on her tablet. "And if he refuses?" Blake's expression hardened. "Then we deploy our nuclear option. The full Eleanor Miller evidence file goes public. Victoria's manipulation, corporate espionage, everything. It won't stop Grayson's offer, but it will neutralize her influence with the board and create serious legal consequences for her." "That's a significant escalation," Jennifer cautioned. "Are you prepared for the personal exposure? The media will have a field day with the story. It will inevitably impact Sarah and Lily." Blake hesitated, the protective instinct he'd developed toward his newfound family warring with his determination to save his company. "Reach Quan first. If he agrees to sign tonight, we hold the nuclear option in reserve." As Jennifer left to execute his instructions, Blake's phone rang with a Houston area code he didn't recognize. Answering cautiously, he was surprised to hear an unfamiliar male voice. "Mr. Harrison? This is Thomas Wilson, Eleanor Miller's former attorney. I've been trying to reach you regarding some additional documents Ms. Miller left in my possession. I believe they may be relevant to your current situation." Blake straightened in his chair. "What kind of documents?" "Material that could be helpful in your ongoing legal matters," Wilson replied carefully. "Including recorded conversations between Ms. Chambers and certain financial entities regarding Harrison Technologies. Ms. Miller was quite thorough in her investigations." A potential game changer. "I'm in New York until tomorrow evening. Can this wait until my return to Houston?" "Under normal circumstances, yes," Wilson answered. "However, there are time-sensitive aspects. Ms. Miller arranged for certain information to be released to regulatory authorities if I didn't confirm your receipt of these materials by a specific date. That deadline is approaching." Blake checked his watch. It was nearly 7 p.m. "When can we meet?" "I can be at MD Anderson tomorrow morning. I understand you visit Ms. Miller regularly." "I'm in New York until tomorrow evening," Blake reiterated. "Is there any way to review these materials remotely?" "I'm afraid not. Ms. Miller's instructions were explicit about chain of custody. The materials must be delivered in person." Blake ended the call with a promise to contact Wilson upon his return to Houston, then sat back, contemplating this new development. Additional evidence against Victoria could be invaluable, but the timing was problematic. The Axiom deal needed to close before Grayson made their move, and he had promised Lily he would return tomorrow, a pinky promise he was loath to break. Jennifer returned with a response from Axiom. "Quan has agreed to a private dinner at 8 p.m. to discuss accelerating the signing. No guarantees, but he's open to the possibility. Blake nodded, already formulating his strategy for the evening. Book the private dining room at Daniel. And Jennifer? Have the jet prepared for an early departure tomorrow, regardless of the outcome with Axiom. I made a promise to my daughter that I intend to keep. As night fell over Manhattan, Blake steeled himself for the high-stakes dinner ahead. The next 12 hours would determine not just the fate of Harrison Technologies, but potentially the future of his newly discovered family as well. Victoria had forced his hand, pushing him toward a decisive confrontation he'd hoped to avoid while Sarah's treatment was ongoing. Now, there was no more room for delay. By tomorrow morning, either he would have secured Harrison Technologies' future through the Axiom deal, or he would be engaged in all-out corporate warfare with Victoria and Grayson Venture Partners. And somewhere in Houston, a 5-year-old girl was counting down sleeps until her father's return, blissfully unaware of the business battlefield he was navigating to protect their future. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The silence in Dr. Rodriguez's office felt oppressive as she reviewed Sarah's latest test results. Blake sat beside Sarah, their hands intertwined, both bracing for whatever news had warranted this late-night summons. Your liver enzymes have spiked dramatically, Dr. Rodriguez finally explained, turning her monitor so they could see the concerning numbers highlighted in red. This indicates your body is struggling significantly with the current treatment protocol. If we continue, we risk permanent liver damage that could compromise your ability to tolerate the experimental treatment. Sarah's grip on Blake's hand tightened. So we need to stop the current treatment immediately? Yes, we need to give your body time to recover before proceeding with the gene therapy protocol. Dr. Rodriguez's expression remained professionally compassionate. The concern is the window of recovery versus disease progression. Without active treatment, the cancer could advance during this period. How long? Blake asked, the question hanging heavy between them. Ideally, 3 to 4 weeks for liver function to normalize. With the 2-week preparation timeline you've arranged for the experimental protocol, we're looking at a total treatment gap of 5 to 6 weeks. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this latest setback. And during that time, supportive care only. We'll monitor closely for any disease progression and intervene if absolutely necessary, but our priority must be getting your body strong enough for the experimental protocol. That remains your best chance for long-term remission. Blake processed this information, mentally calculating what it meant for their timeline, for Sarah's overall prognosis, for Eleanor's 6-month deadline that continued its relentless countdown. Could Sarah recover at home during this period? He asked, thinking of Lily, of the family routine they'd established, of Sarah's frequent expression of feeling trapped in the hospital environment. Dr. Rodriguez considered the question. With proper monitoring and immediate access to care if needed, yes. Home recovery might actually be beneficial psychologically, which can positively impact physical recovery. Sarah's expression brightened slightly at this possibility. I could be with Lily every day, in a normal setting. I'll arrange for home nursing and daily monitoring, Blake promised. Whatever resources are needed to make this work safely. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, then added more soberly, I need to emphasize that this recovery period is critical. Any additional physical or emotional stress could compromise your body's ability to heal, potentially delaying the experimental treatment further or even making you ineligible. The warning was clear. Sarah's condition remained precarious, the balance between recovery and disease progression delicate. Every decision, every environmental factor, every emotional experience needed to be carefully managed to optimize her chances. The drive home was quiet. Both Blake and Sarah lost in thought as they processed this latest development. It wasn't until they were nearly home that Sarah finally broke the silence. I want to marry you, she said simply. Not in 6 months, not when I'm better now. Blake glanced at her, surprised by the sudden declaration after their earlier conversation about marriage being more than a practical arrangement. Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez just emphasized minimizing stress. Planning a wedding? Not a wedding, she interrupted gently. A marriage. Simple, private, legal. Just us, Lily, and whoever needs to be there to make it official. She turned to face him fully. This isn't about Eleanor's condition or legal protection anymore. It's about choosing what matters while we still can. Blake studied her face in the dim car lighting, seeing not resignation or fear, but a clear-eyed certainty that touched him deeply. You're sure about this? Earlier tonight, we were talking about marriage being more than a practical arrangement. And I still believe that, Sarah affirmed. This isn't practical, Blake. It's the opposite. The practical thing would be to wait until I'm stronger, until my treatment is complete, until our future is more certain. But life has taught me that certainty is an illusion. All we have is now, this moment, the choices we make today. Her words resonated with Blake, echoing his own evolving perspective since Elizabeth's sudden passing, since discovering Lily, since building this unexpected family unit amid crisis and challenge. Sarah Miller, he said softly, are you proposing to me? A smile touched her lips. I believe I am, though I'm afraid I don't have a ring. Blake brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. Then yes. Not for Eleanor's conditions or Lily's inheritance or legal protection. Yes, because I choose you, because we're building something real together, because somehow in the midst of all this chaos, we found each other again. 3 days later, beneath the sprawling oak tree in their backyard, Blake and Sarah were married in a simple ceremony attended only by Lily, Dr. Rodriguez, and the judge who had been persuaded to officiate privately on short notice. Sarah wore a simple cream dress that complemented her shorter hair, now growing back in soft auburn waves. Lily scattered rose petals with solemn importance, taking her role as flower girl with characteristic seriousness. The vows they exchanged were brief but heartfelt, promises of partnership, of facing whatever came together, of cherishing each day as the gift it was. When Lily insisted on adding her own promise, to be the best helper and to always put my toys away, the small gathering laughed. The moment of lightness, a perfect counterbalance to the gravity of the commitment being made. As Blake slipped the simple gold band onto Sarah's finger, a ring chosen together rather than the elaborate diamond he might once have insisted upon, he felt a profound sense of rightness, of completion that had nothing to do with Eleanor's conditions or legal formalities. The quiet celebration afterward was interrupted by a call from Jennifer in New York. Blake excused himself to take it in his office, concerned by the urgent tone in her text message. Victoria's made her move, Jennifer reported without preamble. She's filed a motion challenging your custody arrangement, claiming that Sarah's medical condition combined with your work commitments creates an unstable environment for Lily. She's positioning herself as an alternative guardian, citing her long-standing relationship with you and her supposedly deep concern for Lily's welfare. Blake's jaw tightened with anger. She's never even met Lily. This is absurd. Absurd, but potentially damaging. The hearing is scheduled for next week. Judge Carlton is presiding. The same Judge Victoria had been seen dining with privately. Blake processed this information quickly, forming a strategy. Forward everything to our legal team in Houston, and Jennifer, execute Protocol Sunlight. Protocol Sunlight was the code name they had established for the controlled release of Eleanor Miller's evidence against Victoria, not to the public or press, but directly to the authorities and specific legal channels. It was the nuclear option Blake had hoped to avoid while Sarah's treatment was ongoing, but Victoria had forced his hand. The next morning, as Sarah and Lily prepared breakfast together, a scene of domestic normalcy that had become precious to Blake, his phone rang with a call from Thomas Wilson. It's done, Eleanor's former attorney reported. The evidence packets were delivered to the FBI field office, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and Judge Carlton's chambers simultaneously at 9 a.m. Victoria Chambers was detained for questioning 20 minutes ago. Blake exhaled slowly, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and regret. Victoria had orchestrated her own downfall through her relentless pursuit of control, her inability to accept the life Blake had chosen without her. "What charges is she likely facing?" he asked. "Corporate espionage, financial fraud, witness tampering at minimum," Wilson replied. "The evidence regarding Elizabeth's medical care is less conclusive legally, but the FBI will investigate thoroughly. Judge Carlton has already recused himself from your custody case, citing previously undisclosed conflicts." After ending the call, Blake joined Sarah and Lily at the breakfast table, the normality of the scene striking him anew. Sarah looked up questioningly, reading his expression. "Victoria?" she asked softly, mindful of Lily's presence. Blake nodded slightly. "Handled. Permanently." Sarah's relief was visible, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "So we can just be a family now? Focus on getting better? On Lily's school? On normal things?" "Normal things," Blake agreed, the concept both strange and wonderful after months of crisis and conflict. "Though I might need coaching on what normal actually looks like." Sarah laughed, the sound brightening the kitchen. "I think we'll figure it out together." The next 6 weeks unfolded with a rhythm that began to feel like the normal life they'd discussed. Sarah recovered at home, her liver function gradually improving under careful monitoring. Lily thrived in kindergarten, proud to introduce Blake as her father during Parents' Day. Harrison Technologies stabilized under Blake's remote leadership, the Axiom integration proceeding smoothly now that Victoria's interference had been neutralized. On a crisp December morning, Dr. Rodriguez arrived at their home with news they had been desperately waiting for. Sarah's body had recovered sufficiently to begin the experimental gene therapy protocol. The treatment that represented her best hope for long-term remission could finally commence. "The procedure will start tomorrow," Dr. Rodriguez explained as they sat in the living room reviewing the detailed protocol. "You'll need to remain hospitalized for the first week, then transition to outpatient treatment if all goes well." Sarah nodded, her expression determined rather than fearful. "And the projected timeline? Initial treatment phase is 8 weeks. If you respond as we hope, maintenance therapy would follow for 6 months. Full remission, if achieved, would be confirmed after a year of clean scans." A year. Blake absorbed this information, mentally mapping their future. A future that now seemed possible in ways it hadn't before. Sarah reaching remission, Lily completing kindergarten, their family building a life together beyond crisis and treatment protocols. That evening, after Lily was tucked in bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit and a story about brave princesses, Blake found Sarah standing on the patio, gazing at the stars. "Nervous about tomorrow?" he asked, joining her. "Strangely, no," she answered, leaning against him as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "I feel ready. Whatever happens, we've already won the most important battle." Blake looked at her questioningly. "We found our way back to each other," Sarah explained. "We gave Lily the family she always wanted. We created something real and lasting, even in the midst of uncertainty." Blake kissed her forehead gently, recognizing the truth in her words. "You know, when Elizabeth died, I thought my chance at family died with her. I couldn't imagine loving again, building a life with someone else, being a father. And now," Sarah prompted softly, "now I understand that life isn't a single chapter. It's a series of stories, each with its own beginning and ending. Elizabeth will always be part of my story, just as your mother will always be part of yours. But this chapter, our chapter, is still being written." Sarah smiled, turning in his arms to face him. "I like that. Our chapter. With a very persistent little co-author who insists on happy endings," Blake added, thinking of Lily's determined optimism. "Speaking of our co-author, she's requested pancakes for breakfast tomorrow before we go to the hospital. Blueberry pancakes, specifically." "Then blueberry pancakes she shall have," Blake promised. "And Sarah? Whatever happens with this treatment, however long the road ahead, we'll walk it together. All 3 of us." Sarah's eyes glistened in the starlight. "I know, that's how I know I'll get better. Not because the treatment is guaranteed, but because I have something too precious to lose, a future worth fighting for. As they stood together under the Texas stars, Blake Harrison, once defined solely by corporate success and strategic control, felt a profound sense of peace. The man who had lost a wife and gained a daughter in the space of a single day had found his way to a new understanding of what truly mattered. Not empire building or market dominance, but family, connection, love in its most resilient form. The road ahead would have challenges. Sarah's treatment, Lily's ongoing adjustment, the inevitable complications of building a life together after so much time apart. But for the first time since receiving Eleanor Miller's fateful envelope, Blake felt truly confident in their ability to face whatever came next. Not because the future was certain. It never was. But because they had chosen each other, chosen family, chosen love in the face of uncertainty. And that choice, Blake now understood, was the only victory that truly mattered.